Welcome to another episode of The Greatest Pod. I'm Ron Swallow.
I'm Ed Greer. And today we have a super duper guest. He is, he's a member of the tribe now. We've been doing Reboot It with him. And he's a creative genius in that regard. You've been listening to Hot Takes, his podcast, for years. This is its farewell season, so we're getting him at a premium. You know him, you love him. Give it up for our man and yours, Billy Business.
Oh, you're getting me for the homie discount right now. No, I'm happy to be on the greatest podcast, and I hope this is the greatest episode of the greatest podcast. You guys are going to peak on this episode.
That's a bummer because it's going to be a relatively early episode in there.
Yeah, episode 5 or 6 to shut it down.
Well, to be fair, I did one of the first hot takes, and it's still the best. So
it's still very highly clicked. So yeah, that was the gold standard.
So yeah, maybe he could bring some gold to our enterprise, and you know who we're talking about. So you know the person we're talking about has a lot of gold. But but as we get into it, though, this is not a controversial opinion, but it's one of our first like truly state your case episodes, because a lot of times people talk around things that aren't really debatable. It's just sort of like your opinion, but this is hotly probably contested in certain circles. So
I would argue that it's super hotly contested. But you know what, guys? I think people might want to catch up with Billy a little bit, even though if you listen to Hot Takes, you probably have an idea of what's been going on in his life. But maybe you don't. You don't usually do a lot of personal stuff when you're on Hot Takes. So what's been going on, Billy? How's you have a child? You're a dad?
That's right. I am a Mandalorian with a baby. That I'm not trying to get back to another species. So it's everything that people say it is, and then it's like 10,000 times more than that. Like I feel like Han Solo, where I'm just like, it's true. It's all true, you know. Like, yes, I'm tired all the time, but also like I would do anything for my kid. And that's kind of where you are, you know. And you make time to do some reboots once a week, you know.
Yeah, and to sit down with a couple of buddies and talk about Batman. The Onscreen version, my friends.
The on-screen version of Batman, which I feel like, you know, if you're putting me to you know, in front of the grand jury, that would probably be the one thing that I'd want the jury to hear the most is like, this version of Batman is what I love the most, because I think, you know, you could talk about Batman, you know, every which way, and it's discussed so many times how malleable this character is. So my argument being is that this is my favorite interpretation of the character of Bruce Wayne / Batman.
Well, yeah, and one thing that I'd like to do is let's just kind of try to go through the Batmans. And I'd like to start with the one from the 1940s serials that had like 2 socks with change in them for bat ears and a towel.
It looks like one of my daughter's onesies, like after I take her out of the bath, you know.
I forgot about that one, Ed. Nice.
I'm just saying, like, so what I would like to do is have the audience be able to see in their mind's eye all the different interpretations of Batman. Now, nobody has watched those serials, but you see that weird suit that was kind of cool in a way, but just really retro and messed up, and how Robin looked. It was just weird. So that's one version.
They re-released them on DVD around one of these Batman movies, and I bought it, and with all intentions to watch it. And I think I got like a third of the way through where I was like, I get it. I'm glad we've evolved past this.
But dude, it's like worse than a play from the kid in Rushmore. You know what I mean? The type of production value in those old serials. But okay, so let's evolving past that. I don't know that there was a Batman in the 50s, maybe on the radio or something, but I wouldn't know about it. We get to 60s Batman. So we have Adam West as Batman. Yeah, I could see Keaton being considered better than him.
I mean,
you know?
Yeah, here's the thing. I feel like the Adam West Batman is cyclical in the sense that it's like, okay, when it first came out, it was huge, and that's what a lot of people, to this day still kind of maybe some of the older generation considers their Batman. Then once this, the 80s, the late 80s, the 90s hit, that was like almost seen as a disrespectful take on Batman. Then it came back around again. It almost, you almost forget that around like 2013, 2014, this massive influx of, and it was mostly because they'd finally figured out the right situation between Fox and Warner Brothers, but there was like this massive influx and kind of like this, remember how awesome the show was, and merchandise was coming out and everything. And then it kind of hit back around again where it's like now we're still kind of stuck, at least on screen in the movies, where it's just like we had Affleck's, which was, much more in the style of kind of like the Dark Knight Returns, and now with Robert Pattinson's, his looks even darker somehow than Ben Affleck. So it's like the Adam West gets both praised and vilified, probably more than any other live action Batman that I can think of.
Yeah, I think it's also one of the ones to me, the only thing I find utterly distasteful about the 60s one, honestly, I think the acting is funny. I get the joke that they're doing. They decided not to take superheroes seriously, which is almost refreshing now that every superhero has a wife chopped up in the fridge and a horrifying backstory of how their parents were killed. Every single hero, even the Flash now, it's like, hey, nobody's parents just rocking in a chair some fucking where.
Well,
These guys are powered by trauma.
I gotta say though, like, if you are a guy who can run faster than whatever, like the speed of all of whatever speed it is, because it's pretend time.
The speed of speed, of course.
Yeah, like your
Flash runs faster than speed of speed.
Yeah, it's bananas, But like, why would you become a superhero in most cases unless you had something that happened to make you think about being a superhero?
Could you imagine the Flash like on speed or on cocaine?
I don't know. Give me it on time. He's just
the
like,
amount of like work that he could probably get done is staggering. Like Rome could be built in a day if the Flash was on cocaine.
Dude, and he'd be like, who built this thing? Me. That's who. Who I trust? Me. The Flash.
Like asking himself.
Because he's in so many different places, he's talking to different versions of himself at different times. But the bottom line is, though, everybody got tragic and everybody got Batmanized in the way that we started to see it after the Keaton films and stuff. It started to be that you had to be a dark, brooding version of Batman to be the real Batman, and that's one reason why Adam West gets lambasted and everything. But I do kind of enjoy it, as a change of pace now. It's evolved into a change of pace.
It's oddly like a palate cleanser to almost all superhero media. And what's really like kind of ironic about it is, they did almost the exact same thing with Batman Brave and the Bold, and everyone's like, oh, yeah, that's for kids, so I give it a pass. It's like, well, just because you still like Batman 66, please don't think that also wasn't for children. That was something that, like the best Pixar movies where the kids don't get a lot of the jokes, or I certainly didn't know that Batman was a joke when I watched it as a kid, but my parents thought it was funny,
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, like, you have to be able to take a step back from the thing you love and be able to laugh at the weird parts of it. And a lot of the parts that were in Batman 66 are parts that should be made fun of a little bit. Like,
sure,
absolutely.
I think that's kind of where I have my friend Carlos and Chris. They always talk about Batman, where it's like the problem with some of the more realistic depictions of Batman is the more you make it real, the dumber the concept of Batman becomes. Like, the lamer Batman is, the more real you try to make it.
Well, dude, I'll weigh in here. I agree with that. It's a dance. You know what I'm saying? It's a dance. You have to dance the dance. And just getting to that one quick thing, everybody's talked about, Batman could do more with his wealth and the crime, blah, blah. I don't really care about that. Like I said, I've evolved past that thought. I understand now that Batman fights undead ninjas and people who've been alive for 5,000 years. So what does money do to fight that? Okay. He doesn't, in the best Batman stories, he doesn't beat up inner city youth for stealing stereos. He fights things that are going to kill the world or his entire city. So let's put that on the shelf. The other thing I thought was just abominable about the 66 show was him having a phone to call the police.
Yes.
I got a red phone. The police can call me and I can call the police. I'm a straight vigilante, but I walk around in broad daylight with a badge. He had an honorary badge, a junior G-man badge, and he and Robin were christened vigilantes. And I'm just like, there's so much wrong with that.
I almost, because, the thesis of this episode is that I think Michael Keaton is hands down the best Batman. But if I had to change literally one thing out of those two Batman movies, it's a 10-second scene. It's in Batman Returns. I hate that he's just walking down the street with Jim Gordon for literally 10 seconds, and that's the only time they interact. But it's like, I think the concept of Batman working with the police in any public fashion is dumb. And I feel like the Nolan movies, at least in Batman Begins and parts of Dark Knight, they kind of did good where it's kind of like Gordon's kind of side piece that he doesn't really want to tell anyone about. But when he shows up to that guy's apartment and there's, the two dead guys and their names combined are Harvey Dent, and he just strolls in past the police. Like, I'm with you, Ed. I hate that the idea of Batman being deputized. I think it should always be Gordon's dirty little secret.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because he's the guy who wants to get things done, and he knows that Batman's going to do it, and he's kind of like, he's walking a fine line all the time as a commissioner in one of the most, corrupt police places of the DC universe in general. It's like Chicago in the Capone times,
Well, the thing is, when you deputize Batman, you also kind of take away a little bit of the dramatic meat of Gordon, because he is trying to fight corruption, and the bitter irony is that he's essentially becoming corrupt to fight corruption because he's dealing with someone that deals with things outside of the law. And that's a really juicy kind of tidbit that you just kind of lose if you're just like, oh yeah, but it's fine. Batman's basically working for the cops.
And that is the only, I hate when people hate anything in pop culture, but because it's like, you need to reserve that for real stuff in real life. But B, I dislike very much in the trailer of the new Batman movie that it appears to show shots of Batman walking past whole squads of cops,
100%
having 100% access to the evidence and stuff, being like, looking at a hair in front of 50 cops, showing them what's what. Hey, here's a piece of gum. Let me show you how to chew it. Oh my God, I hate that.
I am with you, and that's why when we do start to talk about Keaton, that's a very big part of my argument why I think Keaton's the best. But
no, it's a big one. So I think that's the last Batman before Keaton, and I just wanted to touch on those Batmans because it sets the stage for why this Keaton could be considered the greatest. Because when you really look at it, it's the first of, it's about the fourth Batman ever conceived on screen. So they kind of got their legs under him, how they're going to do it.
Yeah.
And then you see that it retains, even though it throws away a lot of stuff that Batman fans love so much, the training montages and all this jazz, it gets to the quick of what Batman is and is a nice distillation. And to the people of that day, firmly took Batman back from the joke persona of the 60s. It's a big deal. It's a big historical, seminal thing that Michael Keaton's Batman does.
Yeah, the 80s action scene, movies were a mixed bag because, there's a few movies where they don't bother showing you how the person got good at what they're doing. It doesn't matter. They're a badass. enjoy their badassery. And I think doing that with Batman was perfectly great. Like we all know that Batman is like, if you've even read a couple comics, you know he's great at martial arts and fighting. Like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, you could read 2 comics and know that. So you don't need to know where that came from. It's fun.
I'm not convinced that this particular version, we'll call it Earth 89, just for the
Nice.
for the continuity. I'm not sure that Earth 89 Batman is a ninja. There's nothing that makes me think that this guy has taken anything more than like pretty good karate classes. But and before jaws drop and people get very upset, I think that's part of what makes this version of Batman work for me, is that, you know, Tim Burton used to say the reason why Michael Keaton was such a good choice for Batman was because when you think of Batman, this is someone who dresses up like a bat, like a demon, to scare his enemies. If you have someone looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger or someone that is a freaking, you know, big, huge cut guy, they're scary enough on their own. You don't want to run into freaking Sylvester Stallone in the 80s in an alley. But if you look at Michael Keaton walking down the street, that is a guy who has to dress up as a creature in order to scare you. And so the believability for me of, say, and this is not a knock on his interpretation, but Ben Affleck got so jacked for Batman v Superman that the thought of him putting on a costume seems like putting a hat on a hat. Like, I was scared of Ben Affleck just doing CrossFit. But there's no need for him to dress up, whereas I love the idea that Michael Keaton is so unassuming. Like, I could tell you just by looking at his pecs that, of course, Ben Affleck's Bruce Wayne's Batman. No one else could fit in that suit. But when you look at Bruce Wayne and then you see Batman, even if you happen to see Batman somewhere out, you'd be like, well, there's no way that that's the same guy. It's apples, oranges completely. And I think that's why this version works so well.
Oh, that's interesting. I always had a problem with the Bruce Wayne of it all, in a way. Mostly because this says something about me more than it says anything about the actual movie. I just never thought of him as a very good-looking person. I thought he was weird-looking, and I always picture Bruce Wayne as, like, you know, a ladies' man. Like, he's like, everybody is like, he's the most eligible bachelor. He's rich, he's good-looking, he's blah blah blah. And I'm like, I don't know. This guy looks like he might be going bald at any moment, and he's skinny looking, and his face is weird. But I think
this sounds like an indictment of Michael Keaton as just a handsome
person.
Man.
Yeah.
But no, I hear you. He's not. Let's put it this way. Especially for that time, he is probably not considered traditionally, like, leading man handsome.
Yeah.
But, you know, when you really think about this concept that, you know, people seem to trot out every single time and act like they were the one that came up with it, which is Bruce is crazier than the villains that he fights are just as crazy. I don't buy Christian Bale, and I certainly don't buy Ben Affleck as being crazy. But I look at Michael Keaton and I look at Michael Keaton not in the suit and next to Jack Nicholson's Joker, especially in that scene in Vicky Vale's apartment. I'm just like, yeah, you both are kind of just, you're on a different level. And I think that's why, you know, when people talk about, like, well, Bruce is just as insane, it's like, yeah, but I've never really seen it other than Keaton, because all the other ones seem like they're pretty in control.
And earnest, too.
Sure.
Like, you know, like the Bale version is very earnest about, like, wanting to make a difference in the world or whatever. I'd agree that the Keaton Batman seems like he really does just want to kick the crap out of bad guys and dress in that bat suit to do it and you know, save some lives in the process, but mostly really beat the crap out of bad guys.
Well, I think what's interesting about the Keaton one in regards to his aesthetic, I agree with everything Billy said. I agree with you guys that it's sort of a weird take. But I also think as I've gone older, I've really started to really like Bruce Wayne's persona in the very first Batman movie. he's a rich dick, and he isn't trying to act weak. You know what I'm saying? He's got a whole war room full of ancient warriors that he's preserving. That clues you into the way he thinks about the world. Like warriors are worth venerating and worth putting in a big hall of doom in his house. And he toys with people. The whole putting homegirl way far away from the table, and that's Mackin. He's weird. He's doing interesting things. He's not just a beautiful, handsome guy who's smart and knows everything. He's a weirdo experimenting with the world. I think that's a real distinction.
I think, with Christian Bale, he seemed not interested in his wealth and his privilege and all that. It was almost just like, sure, fine. With Michael Keaton, you can see how uncomfortable he is in the skin that he owns. And to your point, like, he is kind of a dick. Like, there's a line in that movie that every time I hear it, I just kind of shake my head, because it's Alfred. It's after that dinner scene, at the big table, and then they move to a more intimate place, and Alfred's telling stories, and he says, "Well, okay, good night," and she says, "Alfred's great," and he just goes, "Yeah, I couldn't find my socks without him." I'm like, what a dick thing to say about someone who your whole life is taking care of you, and you just kind of like dismiss him in such a way that it's just like, yeah, he's fine. Like, he's my servant. Yeah, he's cool. Like, and I don't even think that it's like his intent is malice. I think he just like doesn't even know how to properly talk to people and about people, because he is just so socially awkward. He is fully driven to be Batman in that one, and that makes more sense to me, even if it comes off as like, I just, the rich boy, the party guy that I think is, Christian Bale kind of, in my opinion, overdoes it a little bit. I just think like that's not even needed to make Batman an effective thing. Like, you could just tell that Bruce Wayne is not Batman, because Batman seems to be pretty with it, and Bruce Wayne like doesn't even know his name when you ask him, "Are you Bruce Wayne?"
One thing I just wanted to say, he's also doing a psychological experiment, I believe. My headcanon is he's doing a straight up psychological experiment that a lot of rich people do, which is, put on a trucker hat and have a regular shirt on and talk dumb and see if people still respect you like you're the boss. You know what I mean? I think he was doing that thing.
And he leans into it so much more in Batman Returns, because I love in Batman Returns that he almost can't remember how to be like not Batman anymore, because I love when he meets Selina Kyle in Shrek's office, and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I mistook me for someone else." She's like, "You mean mistook me?" He's like, "Wait, what?" Because he's almost just like, he's blatantly just saying, "Oh, sorry, I was dressed up as Batman the last time that we met. Why am I here again?" Like, I love that by Batman Returns, like, Bruce Wayne is like just Looney Tunes at this point.
Well, and on top of that, one of the things, if you are a fan of the lonely Batman, the Batman that does not have a Robin, because that would be irresponsible, and also it's his job to be by himself and stop crime. If you're a fan of that Batman, this Batman is perfect for that. He's got this giant house that he doesn't use almost at all. He's got just Alfred, who he literally is just like, yeah, that guy gets my socks. He's definitely this guy who like is by himself in this crazy bubble. And I actually really enjoyed the loneliness that Michael Keaton brings to a character who is a pretty lonely character.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, just picking out lines of dialogue, there's some jokes in these movies that really tell you about Bruce. There's one in Batman Returns where Alfred brings him a meal, he spits it out, he's like, "It's cold." And he's like, "It's fishy swat. It's supposed to be cold." He's like, and Alfred's basically just being like, "Hey, you're supposed to be rich. You're supposed to know this stuff. Like, don't make me teach you how to be spoiled rich." But, being Bruce Wayne is half of it, and being Batman is the other half. And what I would say about that is, like, while I enjoy a lot of Christian Bale and Ben Affleck, and I actually think some of Ben Affleck's Batman stuff is really great, I kind of think it's not even necessarily the actor's faults, but it's like Batman '89 especially. Batman is portrayed so cinematically, so iconically, that I feel like the other movies just don't shoot Batman in a way that makes him feel larger than life. Like, especially Batman Begins. Batman Begins is, in my opinion, incredibly overlit. And I have seen Batman's suit in that movie in just about every stretch of like daylight or fluorescent lights, either on the subway or like in stark white in that interrogation in the Dark Knight, or literally in the afternoon in Dark Knight Rises or the morning, whatever it was. Whereas like those first couple Batmans, like when you think about it, they're like comic book splash pages of him coming down with the wings spread, and it's just like when I think of iconic Batman images, it's inevitably from those first two movies.
Yeah, you don't think of the Schumacher one with the bat nips, the Robin nips?
I mean, I could tell you why you're wrong about the bat nips, but I feel like that's a different episode of this show. They can listen to the hot takes that you and I did, Ed, of Batman Forever, where we talked about bat nips.
But you're referring to that iconic moment where the Batman is coming down with the cape open and everything. And
I mean, to be fair, he does it like 3 times or 5 times in that first movie. But that's the thing. It's like it almost felt like, Tim Burton was, very much in love with the idea of this demon swooping down, almost comically, to the point where it's just like every time Batman enters a room, he's got his arms up with the cape. Like, all right, we get it. Put your arms down. But the way he glides, the way that it's shot, so it's like, a lot of times in the comics, you just see the whites of Batman's eyes, and you're like, how does that translate? But what they do in that, the first couple of movies is it's lit in such a way where it's just like his eyes disappear into shadows, and you really do feel like you're seeing what, in my opinion, what I think Batman should be, which is like this kind of like, what the hell is this scary monster? Batman should be a monster. And that's why I always like any iteration of Batman. I always think the dumbest thing that Batman ever did was put his yellow logo in the middle of his black ass chest, because it's just like, if you didn't have that, it's the one thing that George Clooney's Batman did right, which was just have a solid color. But if you have a bright yellow thing in the middle of your black suit, it's like, okay, well, obviously you're not a monster. You have corporate branding on you. But other than that, I buy it,
Well, I mean, I think though that goes, and obviously it's all headcanon, but like I think that goes towards that weird, I think Azzarello might have written it, where Batman was like fighting somebody and he goes, you know why I leave my mouth open? Because I'm fucking with you. It's like I'm a guy. I got teeth and everything, but I still have a weird suit on and I'm beating your ass somewhere. You were in the middle of doing something you shouldn't have been doing, and you had all the angles doped out, and now a person is beating your ass right now. And that just weirds people out. Once they see that he's not a monster, it's the double freak, right? It's like, oh, a monster's getting me. And that's just like, oh, my pelvis is broken. It's a double freak out.
Arguably, if your suit is mostly bulletproof, you want people to aim for your chest, not your face.
Well, I mean, Frank Miller did put that in the canon that putting a target on your chest is the reason why he actually did the big bat symbol, at least, is for somebody to shoot at something that he could fortify rather than something that he could not, which is his white face under his mask to show that, hey, it's okay for me to be a vigilante. It's okay for me to be skulking on a rooftop. I'm obviously not stealing. But I really think, though, I think going back to Billy's point, though, it is interesting that out of all the movies of the Batman, a little bit of Batman Begins and a lot of the first 2 Batman movies by Burton, and about 15 seconds of BVS where Batman's creeping across the ceiling.
Which, by the way, I have said is the greatest Batman moment in Bat movie history.
It is.
That 1:15.
It is.
I was like, that's what Batman is. It is right there.
And that shows, I mean, as much as Zack Snyder is maligned, That's a Snyderism. That nobody else did that. Nobody else conceived that. He did that, and he executed that, and he saw it that way. And that it was such a sick scene. So all I'm saying is, besides those scenes we just said, though, or those milieu we just talked about, Batman isn't presented as a monster. Or the subterfuge, all the work that he puts into this ridiculous subterfuge, the cape to mask where he's at, so you shoot his cape instead of him. The emblems you can shoot at instead of his mouth. The voice in the dark that you shoot at instead of noticing that he's right above your head. All of this subterfuge is thrown away when he's walking around in broad daylight. Hey, Jim, how's it going? I got the donuts today. You know, it's just he's doing finger guns to everybody. Hey, Sandra. You know, it's just stupid. That's a horrific.
Oh, he's from New York too now. I like that.
Dude, it's a horrific conception of Batman, and you're winning me over to your case, Billy, of Michael Keaton being the best, because Nolan couldn't wait to show you that he was a fucking man wearing combat boots and a Nomex outfit and a cape that looked like your mom made it out of vinyl. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes, or like, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes the cloth looking nature of his cape put me off and made it look like a Halloween costume. Batman's cape should look like heavy leather from hell.
What's interesting about it should look like a Batwing. Which is what I loved about those capes did. But the interesting thing about Batman Begins, which by the way I think is my favorite of that trilogy, but
mine too.
You know, once they get him in the like the sequence of him taking people and you can't see where he is, is great. Yeah. But then it's like Nolan can't help himself, or they make them do it. Is probably more likely, where the next scene he goes to visit Rachel and he's just kind of sitting there and she's startled for 0.05 seconds and then they're just having a normal conversation. Where in the Burton Batman movie, at least the very first one, you got to give credit to Pat Hingle, who played Commissioner Gordon. Even though they did Gordon pretty dirty in those movies, Gordon sells it right off the bat with that, oh my God. Everybody treats Batman in that first Batman movie as what the hell is this? Even Jack Nicholson's Jesus the first time that he sees Batman. It's putting respect on Batman's name from the get-go, so that we know, like, oh, people are afraid. I just never get the sense in any other Batman movie that people are afraid of Batman.
Yeah, I mean, they set that up in the first scene where the two robbers are nervous. Oh, no, did you hear about the guy? The guy,
Johnny Gobbs, yeah.
Yeah, he got so messed up, and we should get out of here. We should just get out of here right now. You shouldn't have done that to the kid. You shouldn't have done, and then Batman shows up and beats the crap out of him, and now he's scared. A giant bat! Like all that stuff is so great. And obviously, Keaton,
the legend stuff, but which is one thing Nolan movies tried to get right, was the him being an idea more than a guy. But then Nolan can't wait to show that he's just a guy. He can show that to us. I don't mind if occasionally you show that to us, but even sometimes the Burton movies didn't show some of his weaknesses to us.
But here's the thing, that there's the line in Batman Begins where he's like, if you become more than whatever, you become a legend. And for me, I like that Tim Burton's version of Batman is he becomes an urban legend. And I feel like the distinction is very different. And even in that very first scene that you're talking about, Ron, like, it always used to bother me that, like, immediately Batman gets capped and just falls on his ass. But then when you watch it again, like, watch the way that Michael Keaton gets up. He does it as, like, he gets up and he's almost like he's a zombie, the way he stumbles up, and then he thrusts his cape down like, you didn't just not kill this guy. You just pissed it off. Whatever this thing is, you just made it angry, and now it's stalking you. And I never got that sense from any other Batman movie. That's not to take away any enjoyment I have of those other Batman movies, but it's like in terms of, like, Batman is this urban legend. You don't know if it's real. Gangsters and criminals are talking about, like, there's something up on the rooftops. I don't know if we should be doing this. And then it shows up to get you. Like, that is what makes that first one so special to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking about watching that the first time. I remember watching it. I went to a movie theater not a movie theater, I'm sorry, drive-in theater. So I saw Batman at the drive-in theater, not with the good sound. I got to tell you, I went to a drive-in theater recently, and it was like the music was coming through my speakers on the radio, and I was like, oh, this is wonderful. Because I don't know if you remember the drive-in theater speakers when you were a kid.
We put them on the window. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Not so good. It sounded like a scratchy-ass radio. It's like, I'm Batman. Like, what? What did he say? Can you repeat that? But I just remember how, like, I honestly was a little bit scared. I mean, I was, old enough not to be super scared, but, like, when it first opened up and you see the Batman in that first second, you're like, what in the hell? And I don't know if anybody else could have pulled off the gravitas needed but Keaton.
Which is insane, and I feel like a lot of people maybe my age and younger don't realize, like, imagine if tomorrow they're like, we've cast Jim Carrey as Batman. You'd be like, what? I hate this. So this idea that Michael Keaton was bringing gravitas to Batman was non-existent, because this is on the heels of Beetlejuice, where he's acting like a damn fool, and this guy's supposed to be like a very serious take on Batman. It was a lot of concern, but now it's like I almost see Michael Keaton as a serious actor that did some comedic performances,
Well, dude, but one thing, I don't want to act like it's a correction, but guys, I think Keaton and Burton, more importantly, were the ones doing the heavy lifting about the gravitas of moments like that. And frankly, the designers and stuff, because when you really look at it, I love Michael Keaton and I love his performance more and more in my mind as we're talking about it, because I think he was the only actor to let the bat suit do the work sometimes.
Well, to your point, I do give Keaton a lot of the credit, because if you look into the making of Batman Returns, the screenwriter was Daniel Waters, who kind of took over for Sam Hamm, and he's responsible for a lot of the really dark stuff in Batman Returns. But he was saying, I wrote a lot of like very actor-heavy Batman angry monologues, and Michael Keaton went through the script and was like, nope, Batman doesn't talk here, doesn't talk here, doesn't talk here. And I think you could, if you were cynical, you could be like, oh, because he just didn't want to work on Batman anymore. It's like, no, watch the film, because when Batman shows up, he doesn't talk a lot. And he's used very sparingly, because he was like, my take on Batman is that he's this private kind of, this monster. The more that he speaks, the more that we kind of lose, the myth side of Batman. The more that we get into his head, the less effective Batman is. And that's kind of what we're talking about. A bat phone to Jim Gordon is just such the antithesis of what they were trying to do with this Batman, which is he shouldn't be someone that you can just jump into his head and kind of know where he's at. He's all over the map.
And to that point, even a CrossFit scene with Batman seems super fucking inappropriate, because Batman's workouts are private. If you can't go watch fucking LeBron James workout, why the fuck can you watch Batman workout? This doesn't make any sense.
If you could get your hands on it on either the DVD or the Blu-ray of Batman Returns, there's one of the special features where it's all behind the scenes footage, and there's a point in the film where he's just battled Catwoman and she's stuck him in the side with her claws, and he's in the Batcave and he pulls off his glove and he pulls the thing out and he picks up a phone and he calls Alfred, still in the Batsuit, but he calls Alfred like, Alfred, bring down some ointment. He's talking as Bruce in the Batsuit, and Michael Keaton in the behind the scenes footage does not know how to play this. He's like, I feel so uncomfortable playing like normal in this bat suit. And it's really fascinating to watch, because that gives you such an insight into what Michael Keaton thinks of Batman, which is just like any moment that humanizes him is a mistake to put on film. And it's really interesting watching Tim Burton try to talk him into doing that scene.
I mean, I think it is interesting that Keaton has such a process for being Batman, because I think everybody that comes at Batman with a process, as you saw, Christian Bale had a process. The voice, much maligned, but it's a choice. he was really thinking about it. He and Nolan came up with that supposed home run, and they went with it. But as you know, it was really annoying to a lot of people, and Batman talked a little bit too much in it. Like, did a lot of dialogue in that voice, or at least the amount of dialogue sounded like a lot in that voice.
I will never understand why he's such a mouth breather in those movies. It drives me. The one scene I just can't handle is in Dark Knight Rises, where he takes Catwoman to go get the bad pot, and she's like, "You don't know these people anything," and he just has his mouth agape. He's like, "Not everything." Not yet. With his mouth wide open. And I'm just like, if you are so congested, get a nasal aspirator. But your mouth hanging wide open just makes me feel like you are not, like you're a joke, like you're Napoleon Dynamite Batman. You're not the real Batman. That's the only time where I just can't stand it.
I've got cape flying skills. I've got batarang skills.
Whereas, like not every Michael Keaton moment is gold, but I do. There's one moment where he does break Batman character, and I think it's just like it's so great, like because he's up until that point. It's been so like when he's Batman, he's a different person, and it's in Batman Returns where he's trying to outrun the police, and he's just like, I'm going to be Batman, and he flips the switch, nothing happens. He's like, okay, now I'm a little worried. And just enough to let us know that he's still a guy, but, not so much that it becomes parody. Like, that to me is like, that line right there was the absolute sweet spot where he's still this badass urban legend, but he kind of, just because we are in there in that intimate moment with him in the car, he kind of reminds us like, oh, he's still a guy. Like nothing bothers me more in modern Batman than Batman is just like all powerful, omniscient, can do everything. He's great at everything. He's Houdini. Yeah. So any moment that just a wink, just to remind us that it is Batman, not Bat God, and then get right back to it. It's fine with me.
I liked the Vicky Vale moment too, when he's like, he's gonna have to escape because there's just a little too many guys at this point. Like, it's like, I got to get this girl out of here. We got to get this, the information to the Bat Cave to solve the problem or whatever. And then he's like, how much do you weigh? And she's like, huh?
Because he's such a dick. He did like he's, yeah. And then it's not even that, because it's like, okay, he's being practical. It's when he chastises her about it 30 seconds later. He's like, you weigh a little bit more than 108. Like, whoa, come on, dude. Like, what? Like, he just banged this chick and now is trying to like body shame her the next day. Like, what a dick.
Yeah, that is super dickish, and I don't think we stand by that.
However, no, that would never be in the 2020 draft of Tim Burton's Batman. I'll tell you that.
No, absolutely not. But I also think it was just, that was a moment where he's like, he's got to save this person and he's got to be Batman. But he also, I feel like, also is like, that's like just a moment where he does step out of Batman just for a second.
I mean, it makes it memorable. It makes it memorable and human, though. That's the thing. I think back in the days, you could have a somewhat imperfect hero. I'm not talking about imperfect as in own 7 slaves. I'm talking about imperfect as in isn't, correct on every damn thing all the time. You could have some of that because the humanity that it takes, the type of, if you're a well-adjusted, smart person, you don't end up in a bat suit saving any goddamn body. I don't think. You have to have some screws loose, and you have to have some stuff wacky. So I didn't mind it, but I think it was also like, I think it was a nod to Batman being like, my stuff is precisely calibrated. And you almost messed up I had to whip Alfred to make this belt. You're gonna
get a delicious steak for us the other night. I'm such a fatty that every time I watch that, I'm like, damn, that dinner looks good. Yeah.
It really did too,
dude. On the fat talk, it is just annoying in movies. It was wonderful that they actually ate the damn steaks. You know what I mean?
They left so much on that plate, dude.
Yeah, well, that's
It's not happening. I'll be eating every moment of that steak is
that's
going
true.
in my mouth.
But just too many movies, they don't eat almost any of it. They'll be like a giant sumptuous meal, and they put like a half a prawn in their mouth and a little bit of steak, and it's like, shit, we got to rush off to the Capitol, and then it's just all there. They just sort of bag it up and throw it in the trash.
I'd be like, the Capitol can wait,
dude, on the steak. No, but I mean, I enjoyed the fact that just wrap it up here. The Keaton Batman, I think you've won me over a little bit in regards to the overall portrayal, because there are so many parts of some of the other Batman where like Bruce Wayne is too involved and angry in things. Bruce Wayne is slamming Lamborghinis into stuff to stop people in broad daylight. Bruce Wayne's doing so much stuff in the broad daylight that is kind of Batman-y. I don't mind Bruce Wayne doing stuff to help his cause in the daylight. I don't mind that at all. But he's doing Batman sort of stuff in the daylight a lot in the Nolan movies, whereas I feel like Keaton didn't quite do that.
No, Keaton knows that you're never going to suspect he's Batman if you're wearing a turtleneck around town as Bruce Wayne. There's just, you can't.
And his little effete glasses.
Oh, they're
you know what I mean?
hilarious. I just love. That's the thing too. It's like you never go into a Batman movie thinking that Bruce Wayne is going to be some of the best stuff that you actually enjoy seeing Bruce, because a lot of times you're just like, oh, just change into the suit already, like show me Batman. Whereas now, like, I go back and like a lot of the most delicious moments of those movies, like that scene on the couch in Batman Returns of him trying to explain to Selina why he should be able to kiss her is just so awkward, and he doesn't know how to speak to a woman, let alone like a mammal. I love that he, like those are the moments that I think that to me is my favorite version of Bruce Wayne. This is a person who saw something traumatic when they were a kid, and yes, they committed themselves to a cause or to something bigger, but the consequence of that is that you are somewhat in a state of arrested development. Bruce Wayne should not be able to grow up and be completely well-adjusted. I don't even think he should be well-adjusted enough to fake it. Like, I don't even think he knows exactly what is 100% proper behavior, because he's off. He's devoted himself to this like crazy idea. So this movie, or these two movies for me, hits that sweet spot of like, okay, I understand logically why he would dress up as a bat, because you're not really scary as a person. I understand why people wouldn't think that you're Batman, is because you're not intimidating, and you're really not all together when you speak to people as Bruce Wayne. Like you're a little here, you're a little there. And then third, when you do become Batman, the transformation between the look in his eyes when he's Bruce and the look in his eyes in that suit, he really becomes something, not someone, he becomes something else that I feel like none of the other Bat actors 100% pull off.
The portrayal is iconic. It came after a portrayal that, made him a funny joke with shark repellent. And brought it all the way to something that scared us a little bit as kids and intrigued us and made Batman an unknowable force. You've made your case.
And he's coming back around.
Yeah.
And so to tell me that, of all the Batmen who have been Batman, that they're going back to the one that I feel like a lot of us, that was everyone has their James Bond and everyone has their Batman, and this was my Batman.
Sean Connery just R.I.P'd. Oh, Sean Connery just R.I.P'd. What the fuck? Hold on. Retake that. What the fuck? Oh,
leave
God.
that in. Fuck that. Leave it in.
We're on
It was better than the follow-up. I was like, yeah, R.I.P. Pierce Brosnan is actually my Bond, though. So
but that's always these generation characters. You're always going to have one that hits you right in your generation. But I would argue, even if he doesn't hit you right in your generation, given what you just said, Billy, all the different ways that he almost re-mythologized the character, and his portrayal.
And think about how many comic books that guy sold. I mean, Batman was already selling comic books, but I would bet money that if you looked up the increase in sales from the '89 Batman for comics right after that movie came out, I guarantee it went through the roof.
There are documentaries about Batmania in the summer of '89, and for a while, Batman did don a black costume. I in the comics, I think there's a lot of portrayal of Michael Keaton. More so his Batman that you find in Batman the Animated Series. That wasn't just one singular performance and then we tuck it away. That was the starting of a whole generation, like you said, recontextualizing who is Batman.
Yep. So, Billy, do you have anything to plug? Do you have any ways for people to interact with you that they don't already know, or maybe just reiterate some of what they already
Get
know?
on it, reiterate it, do it now.
Definitely, if you want to, if you're screaming at the computer wanting to know what the nipple argument is for Batman Forever, Hot Takes with Billy Biz, it's all on YouTube. That was season 1. I think it was episode 1 or episode 2. It was one of the very first ones ever. We talked Batman Forever and my stance on nipples. And then, guys, we're season 3 of Reboot It is just, it's insanely phenomenal. And I know I'm biased, but I think it's our best season of the 3 so far.
I just want to weigh in right there. I think we're doing I think we're hitting our stride as a group. And I think we're doing things that are even more tremendously collaborative than the last couple seasons.
Yeah, the choices of projects this season has been arduous, but worth the 5,000 emails and texts back and forth, because it's not a lot of it's not the stuff that you would expect, and I think we are better off for it.
Yeah, risk takers and heartbreakers. So thank you guys for listening to this latest episode of The Greatest Pod. Thank you so much for being a great guest, Billy.
As always, I will see you gentlemen on every Saturday.